What's up, guys? Today we are going to talk about how to get into the dissident University of Chicago. Dissident for decades because it has been where fun goes to die. University of Chicago is now quite a dissident among hyper-selective research universities in the United States because it has gone test optional. We'll talk more about that aspect of the admissions process in just a minute. But first, to give you the big picture, today I've got 6 specific actionable tips for you, which, if you apply them all to your life and your application, will supercharge your chances of getting into the free expression protecting and free expression loving University of Chicago. So let's start with tip number 1. Below this video, in the description section, please find the link to my How to Get into the Ivy League Ethically article, which is published on admissions.blog. Read every word of that article. The earlier in high school, the better, because if you can do everything that article is advising, you will go into the formal college application process during the summer before your senior year in high school, well positioned to get into the University of Chicago. The article is also important because it advises you how to make smart academic, testing, extracurricular, and personal communication skills development choices throughout your high school career. Now, as I mentioned a minute ago, University of Chicago is test optional these days. While this is formal policy, the majority of admitted students at the University of Chicago are still applying with their test scores, and for good reason. Many students attracted to the University of Chicago are capable of earning very strong ACT or SAT scores. So for that reason, I want you to achieve the exact same sort of standardized testing profile for Chicago as I advise applicants to achieve if they want to get into an Ivy. Specifically, your goal should be to earn a 1450 plus on the SAT or a 33 plus on the ACT. While students are getting into Chicago without their SAT or ACT scores, you shouldn't assume you're going to be one of those students, because a lot of the students getting into Chicago without test scores have some other desirable characteristic in the eyes of University of Chicago, mind you, that is often immutable. You can't change an immutable characteristic. You can, with a lot of intelligence, hard work, sacrifice, and focus, earn a 1450 plus on the SAT or a 33 plus on the ACT. So put the pedal to the metal and do it if you want to give yourself the best chance of admission to the University of Chicago. Shout out, as always, to convertyourscore.org as the go-to site for ACT-SAT conversions and your ultimate ACT-SAT knowledge base. Convert Your Score is also a great site to visit because it goes into detail about another important test that wise applicants to the University of Chicago will also take, the SAT subject tests. Again, exactly as I advise in my How to Get into the Ivy League Ethically article, you should plan to take at least 2 SAT subject tests and earn 750 plus on both to give yourself the best shot of admission to the University of Chicago. Many people think that because Chicago is test optional, the furthest thing from their minds should be taking and doing well on SAT subject tests. But the University of Chicago will certainly review subject test scores if submitted. There's no reason not to harness your high subject test scores to further positively differentiate your application to the University of Chicago if you can produce strong SAT subject test scores. So if you can, definitely take the tests and submit those scores to University of Chicago. Alrighty, moving on to tip number 2. If University of Chicago is your first choice and you feel comfortable emotionally and financially committing to attending, please apply Early Decision 1. Chicago offers Early Decision 1, Early Decision 2, Early Action, and Regular Decision. University of Chicago gives greatest preference to those who apply binding early decision. Therefore, if you can get your act together early enough, use the earlier ED1, also known as Early Decision 1, deadline if you are ready to attend Chicago when or if admitted. If you are planning to apply early action or regular, good luck. There is going to be even more serious onus on you to elegantly convey to Chicago that you are a Chicago-esque student, because University of Chicago, if you are a competitive candidate, is going to spend a lot of its time during your application review trying to determine whether or not you were applying to University of Chicago as a backup, or if you were applying because you really want to go to University of Chicago. Remember that song, Hey Leonardo by Blessed Union of Souls, with the lyric, "She likes me for me"? Well, Chicago really wants to be sure you like Chicago for Chicago, and that you're not simply applying because you want to attend a prestigious university. Early decision is one way of making clear that you only have eyes for University of Chicago. But all applicants to University of Chicago, regardless of the admissions plan that they use to apply, have to knock the essay portion of the application out of the park in order to convey that University of Chicago should like them for their perceived fit for University of Chicago. We'll talk more about the essays in just a few minutes, but bottom line with tip number 2, if the University of Chicago were my first choice, I would apply ED1. Let's move on to tip number 3. University of Chicago, unfortunately, despite being a very writing-centric university, does not allow you to upload a full-fledged, unabridged extracurricular resume to its supplement on the Common App. Therefore, if you're using the Common App, you must use all 650 words of the additional information section on the writing page of the Common App to elaborate on extracurricular activities that you started to describe in the activities page of the Common App, and or use the additional information section on the writing page of the Common App to describe for the first time activities that did not make the cut into the activities page at all. Always remember that if you want more information on how to build an extraordinary extracurricular resume before you even start applying to colleges, and therefore have a really strong working document to pull from for your college application to a school like Chicago, take the definitive short course, How to Build an Extraordinary Extracurricular Resume, which is linked below in this video's description. Now moving on to tip number 4. Chicago's essay questions have always taken students on a ride into another dimension, especially compared to the questions asked on the supplements of comparable institutions. Wesleyan, for instance, doesn't even attempt the idiosyncrasy of a University of Chicago essay prompt, despite being populated by students who are often very similar in disposition to University of Chicago students. As an important disclaimer, University of Chicago loves to change its supplement with its University of Chicago specific questions frequently. Therefore, depending on when you watch this video, the exact questions on the supplement may have changed, but University of Chicago is neither changing its overall personality so fast nor its approach to education. Therefore, the gist of this tip will remain valuable for the long haul. Currently, the University of Chicago requires you to complete 2 essays on their supplement, and I really like how both are uploads as opposed to copy and paste jobs, so there are no formal word count limits. Now, with that said, Chicago does advise you on the first essay, at least, to upload a 1 or 2 page response. It doesn't specify double space or single space, so for someone like me who has a lot to say, can you tell? That's a dream, because it gives the applicant a lot of space to positively differentiate his or her case for admission with a really thoughtful and well-developed essay. For the extended essay question, you have 6 prompt options to choose from. You need to respond to only one of them. Here are some of the examples for this year. There's some real gems. Cats have 9 lives, Pac-Man has 3 lives, and radioactive isotopes have half-lives. How many lives does something else, conceptual or actual, have, and why? Here's another option. If there's a limited amount of matter in the universe, how can Olive Garden, along with other restaurants and their concepts for food infinity, offer truly unlimited soup, salad, and breadsticks? Explain this using any method of analysis you wish: physics, biology, economics, history, theology. The options, as you can tell, are endless. That one makes me hungry. UChicago has an international campus, or has international campus centers around the world, but we don't have any interplanetary, interstellar, or interdimensional campuses yet. Propose a spot in time or space in this or any universe for a new University of Chicago campus. What types of courses would be taught at the site? What cultural experiences await students who study there? And then 6 this year, at least, is known as Don't Be Afraid to Pick Past Prompts. I liked some of the ones from previous years more than those made newly available for my year. So the question basically goes on to say, feel free to respond to a prompt from a past iteration of the University of Chicago application. So, oh my goodness, rarely am I at a loss for words, but these options certainly put me in that unique position, right? What I will say is that even though to many students these prompts seem out of this world, to the perfect fit University of Chicago student, at least one of these prompts is likely to be very intriguing, if not exciting, to the point where a perfect fit Chicago student will be really eager to tackle one or more of these prompts. So this is sort of like a written Rorschach test, you know, those tests. If you find all of these essay prompts ridiculous, you probably should question whether or not University of Chicago is even worth applying to for you, because it's only going to get more like this once you're there. But regardless of how you really feel about these essay prompt options, you need to take them seriously if you want to give yourself a real shot of getting into University of Chicago. You see, if I see students fall down on these responses, it's for one of the following 2 reasons. A, they don't have the intellectual heft or critical thinking skills necessary to pull off a response the way they need to for these very high-end questions. Or B, they sort of approach the questions like they are jokes, and their lack of respect for the earnestness in which these questions are being asked makes their responses read more like cheap gimmicks rather than sincere attempts at tackling their chosen prompt with as much verve as is necessary to meet the vigor in which all of these prompts are really being posed by the University of Chicago and their admissions team. Yes, the University of Chicago is an eccentric place, and it revels in that reputation. And your response to these extended essay prompt questions, are only going to do one, remember, whichever one you choose, needs to be framed by your ability to revel in your eccentricity and or idiosyncratic take on a particular topic. With as much space as you have to respond, I recommend that you write at least 650 words in response to whichever extended essay prompt you choose. Anything shorter would indicate to me that you are not serious about diving deep into the life of the mind that University of Chicago so embraces. They really do embrace that. They say it all the time. Anything longer than 900 words is probably overkill, because to be a University of Chicago student also means to be able to write and communicate cogently, articulately, effectively, and efficiently. Most students can write a very well-reasoned and well-argued essay in fewer than 900 words. Anything over that feels more like a treatise and less like a college application essay to me. Moving on to tip number 5, and thank you for staying with me. I know it's a lot. University of Chicago also has a more traditional essay prompt that all applicants must answer. This year it is, quote, how does the University of Chicago, as you know it now, satisfy your desire for a particular kind of learning, community, and future? Please address with some specificity your own wishes and how they relate to UChicago, end quote. I want you to keep this prompt at the top of the page as you draft, so you can constantly refer back to it to make sure you are actually staying focused in your response. Then I want you to remember that you need to make the case that you are a perfect fit for the University of Chicago, and University of Chicago is a perfect fit for you by the end of your response. This means before you even start writing, you need to research University of Chicago's academic offerings and its unique curriculum in depth, and determine what differentiates University of Chicago, its curriculum, and its majors, at least the ones you're looking at, from those offered at peer institutions, and why you are particularly attracted to the University of Chicago academically. Only then will you be able to make a focused and specific argument about what attracts you to University of Chicago and the particular major or majors you are considering pursuing at Chicago, and why the overall learning community will help you reach your potential as a student in college and a person in life. Wow, that's a lot, I know. As always, if you find yourself writing content in response to this prompt that could be applied to a similar question on Columbia's, Cornell's, Yale's, or Harvard's application, you have already failed to be as specific as you need to be to clinch your offer of admission to the University of Chicago. Remember, you want to love University of Chicago for what it is, not what its rank is. You need to not only write a very tailored love note that gets at the heart of the life of the mind at the University of Chicago, you also need to show how you will engage with the academic opportunities that you hope to pursue at Chicago and why you are drawn to such areas of study in the context of the overall University of Chicago experience. Even if you are undecided, you have to try to connect a major or a constellation of majors on offer at University of Chicago to your pre-existing interest, and then connect them to how you see yourself evolving as a student and as a person at the University of Chicago and beyond. So, while that's a lot to juggle, you do have the space to say what you need to say as long as you approach this essay with the goal of specifically and methodically responding to the full prompt. That's why I ask you to keep it at the top of the page as you type. Always remember to show just as much, if not more, than you tell. Though I will say, University of Chicago does want you to make sure you reflect deeply and are at least up for a little philosophizing by the end of this essay as well. Okay? Finally, tip number 6. Chicago gives you the unique opportunity, at least unique right now. Maybe it won't be unique in the future years at other colleges, but right now it's pretty unique in the hyper-selective college admissions landscape. They give you this unique opportunity to upload a personal 2-minute video of yourself. And I want you to do it if you can. This is a great way to compensate for the fact that University of Chicago no longer offers interviews. The production quality of your video does not matter as much as what you say and how you say it in your video. The video upload can happen on the Coalition in its locker section if you are using the Coalition app to apply. I am not a fan of the Coalition, but don't worry, if you are applying on the Common App, as I recommend you do, you can always upload your video to the University of Chicago portal, but only after you submit the Common application. You're going to have access to submit the video to the portal a few days after submitting your Common App to University of Chicago, because only a few days after submitting your Common App to the University of Chicago will you be given access to the portal. University of Chicago makes very clear, and I concur, that if there is any important information relevant to your candidacy that you were unable to address elsewhere in the application, you should share that information on this 2-minute video. Now, don't just repeat content already shared. If you are going to do that, better not to submit the video at all. But most students who are good fits for Chicago were at a loss of space on the app, as we discussed vis-a-vis the lack of a resume upload. So most competitive applicants can tell some sort of short, quick story in this intimate selfie-style video format. Use this opportunity if you are up for it and you want to differentiate yourself positively visually and unveil the real person behind the words written on the black and white online application. I really implore you to consider this selfie video, 2-minute video, highly as an option for you to further differentiate yourself. I really think it's a wonderful opportunity to add a greater splash of color to your personality that even the University of Chicago's wild supplement permits. Now, do remember though, that the moving image medium is kinder to some individuals than others. So don't just wing this optional video if you attempt it at all. So, before we wrap up this video, please also watch our recent tour in and around the University of Chicago's campus by clicking on the link to that video in this video's description. On our tour to University of Chicago and its Hyde Park neighborhood, we talk to real University of Chicago students about what they like and what they don't like about living and learning at the University of Chicago. And finally, it does get cold in Chicago starting in October, and it really doesn't warm up until April, if then. In the description below this video is a link to my favorite University of Chicago hoodie. If you got to be in a cold weather climate, you might as well have a hot looking hoodie. If you can get into University of Chicago and go there, definitely remember bundle up. Bundle up. It's going to get cold. Now, we've covered a lot of ground today. Thank you for holding on with me. I'm sure if you've lasted this long, you are now well positioned to put together a stronger application to the University of Chicago than you otherwise would have been able to produce had you not made it to the end with me. Yet, if you want more personalized college admissions coaching and college application feedback, please visit CollegeMeister.com, where you can sign up to work one-on-one with me, Craig Meister. And feel free to watch this video over again to make sure you absorbed all the important information that I shared. Please also consider subscribing to my YouTube channel and share it with your friends. Now, good luck, and until next time, I'm CollegeMeister Craig Meister with all you need to get in.